We turn now to Dr. Sahar Khamis. She's an associate professor in the communications department at the University of Maryland. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Sahar. Now, Egypt, of course, which shares its northern border with the enclave of Gaza, talk about a little bit the kind of ripple effects that it's experiencing from the war.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm an Egyptian American. I do feel, of course, the toll of this, crisis, just like many people around the world, but especially people with roots in the region like myself. And I think that Egypt is really feeling the toll of this crisis. The Egyptian street, the Egyptian public opinion has been overwhelmingly supportive of the Palestinians and the people of Gaza in particular, and very sympathetic and empathetic to their own plight and to the suffering that they have been facing, especially the humanitarian situation, which has been deteriorating day after day. And of course, like many people around the world, they have been also watching not just the mainstream media, which in many cases they criticized for being more biased to the Israeli side at the expense of the Palestinian side, but they've also been monitoring social media and watching all of these videos and all of these horror stories coming out of Gaza. And that created this kind of overall overwhelmingly pro-Palestinian sentiment among the Egyptian people. We have seen people going out in the street, protesting, demonstrating, even in some cases breaking into Tahrir Square for the first time since the Egyptian revolution in 2011 and the Arab Spring back in 2011. We have seen, signs like Free Palestine and We Stand with Palestine that has been overwhelming the Egyptian streets. So that is the overall sentiment in Egypt so far. And of course, they're very frustrated that there is no end in sight to this horrible crisis so far.
But what about the actual ripple effects in terms of concern? I mean, of course, there seems to be strong support for Palestinians, but there is an enormous amount of pressure on Egypt to open its border to Palestinian refugees. Meanwhile, Egypt is suffering enormously with its own economic crisis. What are the biggest concerns for Egyptians in terms of how it sits within this conflict?
Egypt finds itself in a very paradoxical and very difficult and tense situation. As they say, it is damned if it does and damned if it doesn't. In other words, if it does not open the border, it's really always being criticized for, it's not doing enough to help the Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza. More needs to be done. And we have known that the opening of the Rafah crossing has not been a piece of cake. It has not been an easy thing. It has been trying to work on that many times, even for the delivery of simple trucks of humanitarian basic aid of food or medicine that has been sometimes halted or sometimes stopped by the Israeli side. And sometimes the Rafah crossing itself has been bombed several times by the Israelis. So it has not been an easy thing. And if it does open the border completely and welcomes, Palestinians into Egypt, that, as the Egyptian government has pinpointed more than once, does pose its own threats. First of all, it can be a new 1948 for Palestinians, where they're actually leaving their own homeland and not allowed to go back again to Gaza. And it can also be a national security threat for Egypt itself if any kind of escalation happens in this area, which would then require some kind of response from the Israeli side. Therefore, that can really risk even the Camp David peace accord between Egypt and Israel and threaten Egypt's national security. So that's why Egypt is in this very difficult, very paradoxical, and very complicated situation right now.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. We really appreciate your time. Sahar Khamis, Forrest Associate Professor in the Communications Department at the University of Maryland. And that's Dr. Sahar Khamis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.